Hey folks, this is Kalani. Anybody who's played World of Warcraft for more than 9 years, so the people who started back in vanilla, have looked back. They've all looked back thinking, wow, this game really has changed. But is that change for better or for worse? There's a lot of people out there who think that vanilla WoW is what WoW was supposed to be and what it should return to the point where there's actually quite a few vanilla WoW private servers out there for the people stuck in the old days. But I'd question, is vanilla WoW really all that great? There's a lot of things that people seem to think made the game so much better back then, so let's have a look at a few of them. The main thing that usually gets brought up almost instantly is the difficulty. Now, back then, difficulty, WoW was hard. You had to be a genius to get anywhere in World of Warcraft. Which actually isn't really true. Back then, the average skill level of a player was far below what it would be now. The amount of resources they had back then to actually learn their class was just ridiculous compared to today. You could go and Google how to play your class, and guaranteed you could sift through stuff for hours on end about people talking about the mechanics and how things interact with a class and all your abilities and gear. Back then, not so much, to the point where people didn't really fully understand what their abilities did, and the mechanics in fights and the classes themselves weren't all too tuned. And it was fine, it was a new game, people perfectly understood that they may not be playing their class to the best that they can play. They're pressing 2 buttons, seems a little easy right now, but hey, that's what the game was. Now, there are other sections of difficulty, like questing, people saying that questing has gone to the point where you don't really have to do anything, you can go on autopilot and the game will play itself almost, which is kind of true, but that's a different type of difficulty. That's kind of an arbitrary difficulty in that things were tuned pretty poorly back then. You weren't really able to kill things on your own. If you ever came up across an elite back then, you were pretty much screwed unless you had a nice little group of people to take it down. I still remember pooping my pants when I first saw Stitches on the road in Darkshire. That was kind of crazy. Gathering up a few people, even with the Night Watch guards, still couldn't take him down. That kind of thing seems to have gone from the game. That, I will admit, is somewhat of a disappointment. Everything seems to be more solo-orientated these days, and I mean, Blizzard even said themselves a lot of people prefer solo content, so they're gonna work on more solo content, which is a little disappointing, but that's why that difficulty was removed, because people simply don't want to play together anymore. So that kind of difficulty is a little iffy to talk about, but questing in general definitely has got easier, but I feel that's better tuned, not necessarily just making it harder. Not being able to kill a monster that you're on a quest for is actually kind of irritating. You might as well just abandon that quest sometimes, or out-level that quest with grinding. Grinding was incredibly popular back in vanilla because it was a half-decent way to level. Quests were difficult, you didn't really get all that much in the way of rewards, and it took a long time to level at all, which is another thing to talk about, the pace of the game. Getting from 1 to 60 is something that people remember. Getting to 60 was a triumph, it took forever, it was grinding, questing, this terrible, difficult ordeal, which ended in you getting to 60, which was a really good feeling back then. But that pace has changed significantly, because 1 to 60 now is more or less empty content. I mean, even 1 to 99 is kind of empty content because of the way that the game shifted towards endgame. A lot of the focus for a lot of people is right at the end. Some people don't even level their own characters anymore, which is really sad to see because the world is one of this game's strongest assets, I would say. But the pace has changed significantly. People don't grind anymore. People don't spend hours playing just to get a few levels. That's gone. That's gone. But the pace of things like raiding has also gone as well, because you had attunements back in the day. You couldn't even get into Molten Core until you'd done this, that, and the other. So that's gone a little awry too, and people can happily walk into raids as soon as they ding 100 right now. I mean, you'll be getting carried for the most part, but you can still, more or less, walk into raids. There's no attunements. The pace to get into a raid has completely disappeared, which is an interesting thing to talk about. I don't know if attunements would be a good thing to bring back. WildStar certainly tried. WildStar tried to bring attunements back, and they tried to bring 40-man raiding back, which was what Vanilla was rather famous for as well, and look how that ended. That was fairly disappointing to say the least. The attunements they brought in were really restricting, to the point where people just didn't want to work with each other. Oh, you're not on the same step of the attunement quest as me? I'm not really going to go backwards. Sorry, I'm going to jump guilds to somewhere that's kind of in my place, which was incredibly frustrating and disappointing to see. But I wonder, with everything being pushed towards solo play, people not necessarily wanting to play together, which is ludicrous to me in a MMO environment, but would attunements be something they could bring back successfully? It would have to be something which wouldn't be too long or difficult, otherwise people would get frustrated, burn out, and probably argue with each other about what they want to do. People on the last step having to wait for people on the first step would probably not want to stick around. They want to get into raids. The raids that by now they're used to just walking into, which is one of the problems of change. I don't think any of these things could come back successfully because of how much they've changed already. Going back like that would probably alienate a lot of the people who have come because of those changes. The accessibility now for World of Warcraft is so much better than what it was in vanilla WoW. So, attunements have changed. Raiding itself has changed. We've cut down the group size down from 40, which, I mean, anybody who tried to get 40 people together to do the same thing in the same mindset and keep track of that many people kind of knows it's a logistical nightmare. People don't turn up. People don't do their jobs. You have to replace people repeatedly, and when it gets to the point where you're replacing 15 people out of a 40-man raid, it's kind of frustrating. And I don't think they could bring 40-man raiding back in any form. I mean, look at the Molten Core they did for the anniversary. Now that was a clusterfuck. That was pretty terrible. People not understanding what to do, people not bothering to try and understand what to do, people running off and pulling everything, wiping the group, and doing it repeatedly until they either get kicked or the group disbands. And then when you get to a boss, people smashing their face at a boss which actually requires you to do something, and they're not doing it. It's kind of frustrating, and you can kind of see why they've moved away from that, but I find that disappointing. 40-man raids feel epic. For whatever reason, the bigger the raid for me, the more fun I had in it, even if we were wiping constantly. But I'm kind of glad there's a middle ground of 20 players for Mythic now. That makes it so I'm not stuck in a 10-man guild, but I don't have to go and recruit another 30 people. So 20-man seems to be okay, I'd say. But 40-man raiding, I really don't think is coming back. And another thing which ties into the raiding is gear in vanilla. Gear in vanilla was difficult to get. You grouped up, you got your dungeon sets, your blue dungeon sets I might add, and then you tried to poke a few raids in the butt and see if you could get any epics. Epics were pretty rare back then. If you got an epic, you wore it around and you made sure everybody knew. You shinied that thing up as best you could. You stood on the mailbox and you waited for everybody to say, get off the mailbox with your shiny epic. But epics were different. Epics actually meant something. But legendaries are another thing which vanilla actually had quite a few of. But I'd say the legendaries which have been brought out recently are a lot better than the legendaries in vanilla. People went through the entirety of vanilla without ever getting either of their bindings for Thunder Fury. They went through Burning Crusade with the exact same character, clearing Molten Core every single time, and still don't have their Thunder Fury. Having a legendary based on really, really, really poor RNG is probably one of the worst ways to do it. I know some people who get frustrated with the Warglaze of Azeroth. Not necessarily as rare nowadays, because you can solo Illidan every single week, but I got those on my rogue, both pairs, in 3 runs. People despised me for it, because they'd been running it for over a year, and it still hadn't dropped for them. Legendaries on RNG is probably one of the worst things I've seen in vanilla, but that still doesn't mean that the gear is all too different from back then. People are just clearing things faster. You get things handed to you a little more often, sure, but you can still progress and the power creep is still there. It's not going to take you as long. If it took you as long as it did back in vanilla to gear up, I think a lot of people would just peace out. Gear progression is one of the things which people enjoy about World of Warcraft. That's why they're in the raids. They're there for gear. They want to be more powerful. For whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure, so they can clear the next raid and get more powerful from there, but that's kind of what the whole deal is and what brings you back. That's the carrot on the stick. If the carrot is too far away from your face, you can't even smell it, let alone try and bite it. So I think that's the reason why the gear acquisition has changed so much. But PvP has changed as well as the gear. The gear in PvP changed considerably. But I don't really know what to say about PvP right now. PvP is in a little bit of a shambles in Warlords. If we were in a previous expansion, this would be a better discussion. But Ashran right now seems to be pretty poor. I don't really think they managed to capture the essence of vanilla Alterac Valley. So that may have been a little bit of a failure on their side. But PvP was quite different as well. I mean, you actually had quite a few things to work towards with PvP. You had all your titles when you got to your Grand Marshal and High Warlord. People knew you actually spent a lot of time in World of Warcraft. Let's be honest, it's not really much more than that, except you could kill a few people. But it was a time investment, which a lot of vanilla was. A time investment, which a lot of people these days don't have. Which is also one of the things which made vanilla so difficult, quote unquote, was the amount of time that you had to sink into it. But that's not true difficulty, let's be honest. The PvP itself is probably more balanced than it was, although I'm not entirely sure what people are doing on the PvP balance team. Surely they have an idea, or they're just playing the classes they don't really want to change. But either way, at least we're not getting one-shot by rogues, or one-shot by pom pyros. Now the other side of that argument is that if you put the time in, you deserve something shiny. These special snowflakes want their prestige, and oh my gosh was it prestigious to have those titles for PvP. It was super prestigious to have Thunder Fury or Ragnaros's Hammer, but that still doesn't mean that it was difficult to obtain. It just means that you had a lot of spare time, and you used that spare time for World of Warcraft. If you wanted the same kind of prestige in Warlords of Draenor, what exactly would you have people do? Would you have them do a quest that only they can complete? Would you have it go back to the era of opening the Gates of Anchorage, where only one person on the server could get a mount? You want it to be that kind of special snowflake thingy where a lot of people won't even bother to participate because their chances of getting anything is incredibly low. Oh, this means I need to do this XYZ 20 hours a week? I sort of have a job. I guess I won't be partaking in this, which I don't think Blizzard wants to do. I think they want to make the game as accessible as possible so everybody gets a chance at everything. That might pull away from the prestige of having certain items, but you could always do more with your time than someone who has to do other things. You could go ahead and get all your achievements, you could go ahead and get all your mounts. There are still prestigious things in the game, it's just going to take a lot of time to get them. Which I guess is the point, ? But let's move away from all this nitty-gritty of prestige and gear and raiding. Let's have a look at talent trees. People complained for the longest time about the new talent trees, and I'd say, if you think getting 1% damage is a choice, you potentially don't really know what a choice is. The talent trees give you no less choice than what they used to. I mean, sure, you had plenty of choice to go and gimp yourself, to make yourself do less DPS, to make yourself do less healing or be less tanky. But you wouldn't do that in a serious situation. The people complaining that you have less choice in their talent trees now. It's like, there are cookie cutter builds still. I mean, unless they balance everything perfectly to the point where the only difference between taking 2 talents is the aesthetics of a spell. For example, on warriors, if Shockwave did the exact same as everything in its line, but Shockwave was a little AoE. I mean, you can't even balance that unless something like an AoE would split damage and something which wasn't an AoE wouldn't. You can't balance them to make them perfectly equal. So there's going to be one which does more DPS, there's going to be one which does more AoE DPS, there's going to be one which is better for certain situations. I change my talent tree more now than what I used to. I'd say that's more choice. But I do miss clicking all the buttons. That's what we want, really, isn't it? We want to click all the buttons. We want to get a talent point every level, have something to click, and have all those talents that we get, you know, those shiny spells down at the bottom. We want to reach that. It's not quite the same with the talent tree at the moment. And who knows, we may see another iteration of it. But right now, it seems to be one of the best choices. Instead of having some filler talents of plus 1% damage, plus 1% crit, all that's rolled into your character, and you just choose the ones for spells. It's cleaner, it's quicker, it's more efficient. Sure, you get less stuff while leveling, and you don't even get to train your own spells anymore. And we haven't even gotten to all the good stuff about carrying around ammo and gold being so hard to get, and your mounts being super special, having to train your mount riding at level 60. Those were the days. But Vanilla WoW, the biggest thing that it had going for it was that it was a revolutionary game. It was a new game. It was a brand new world which a lot of people already fell in love with from the Warcraft series. It had a lot going for it, and it did splendidly. Nothing has really shaken the world as much as World of Warcraft in the sub-MMO category, so it obviously did something right, but I feel that the changes that it's made since then have just improved the game. Okay, some of them are a little iffy right now, but we've got to trust the company which brought us World of Warcraft in the first place. The newness we won't get back. The revolutionary game, maybe sometime in the future, but everybody wanting to have those new experiences again, just play a different game for a little bit. Play a different game, come back for the expansions, you'll have a little bit of newness there. And all in all, vanilla World of Warcraft was an amazing game in its own right, in its own time. But if someone released something similar these days, I really don't think it would do all too well. Keep those memories close, keep those memories fond, but don't bring World of Warcraft back to what it's already grown from. Let's push forward and see what we can make of this game. So, what made Vanilla Warcraft so great? It was a new game. A new game that millions of people enjoyed and allowed it to grow to what it is today. But I wouldn't want it to go back to that today. What's your opinion? Would you prefer Vanilla Warcraft over the current Warcraft? What was your favourite expansion thus far? Would you prefer Warcraft to go back to those kind of roots? Leave all that in the comment section below and we'll have a good old natter. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below as well. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always,